App with Vedi and Jatt. We're back here for another episode. It says episode 23 on Vedius's official Twitch stream. I think it's episode 23.
It's 20.
I haven't checked.
It might be
So
24, but I'll say 23.
it might be 24. The actual YouTube title is going to be the correct episode one.
Yep.
I will tell you, the people on the stream, I apologize to you. We're starting an hour early because of an unavoidable conflict. Next week, we'll be back at the standard starting time, which is 10 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central European time, every Tuesday for Mind the Gap. We messed up last week. I need to apologize.
Why? What did
we
do?
did not do Vedius's comment of the week from YouTube. He
But we did
took a
read
comment from a different source.
I did, yeah.
Which I think,
but that
which I
doesn't
think was a
count?
mistake.
Oh.
No, it doesn't count. I need to finish the intro, though. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as Vedius's Twitch channel. This is a podcast about the LEC and the LCS where we inform each other on each other's leagues. You just had your finals. We had 1 week before our finals and our All-Pro teams. So there's a lot to talk about, including we're going to talk about WE today. So click the timestamps if we're waffling too much and you want to skip directly to that. I see you. I know there are people that do that. So see you later. But Vedius, what's your comment of the week?
As a reminder to the viewers at home, if you're watching live on the stream, but you don't catch the full stream, you can check out the JLXB YouTube channel. And if you're watching on the JLXB YouTube channel, you can watch on Vedius, twitch.tv official, Vedius official. But also,
that was implied.
There's the podcast that exists on Spotify. There is the podcast that exists on Spotify. Okay. It's very important. I know that there's some dedicated Spotify listeners, and it only happens when I remind Jatt. So that's why I'm doing this for you out there. Shout out to our Spotify listeners. And of course, we will have a hashtag at the end of the episode. So make sure you listen all the way to the end. So beginning with our comment of the week, I do feel like this is somewhat inspired by this comment that I found, which was by All 8 Senses. Okay. It was a fresh comment. It was 41 minutes after the video was posted, right? I feel like some Mind the Gap podcasters need to reevaluate how they do the weekly YouTube comment section. Too often, YouTube comments are overlooked for rage bait tweets they think are about them. You have to take into account the time the fans put into crafting comments based on the podcast discussion and their individual thought pool. Consistency matters, and I hope they approach next week differently. So, All 8 Senses, we're sorry. We're sorry.
Yeah.
We're sorry. But unfortunately, generic YouTube comments don't get clicks, and we're rage baiters. So, hope that addresses the comment. Your comment was read out. I do feel like it was specifically tailored in order for me to read it, because it was tailored, and you know that I am both petty and easily baited.
True.
So, congratulations to you. That was our comment of the week.
Speaking of which,
yeah.
Speaking of rage bait,
yeah.
I had an ill-fated NBA Finals tweet on Wednesday, so like a day after the pod. I know this is like 6 days old.
Yeah.
It was top of mind for a little while. Essentially, I had this idea that I'm going to lose you real quick, but I need to tell this story. The Knicks' best player, Jalen Brunson.
I was just about to say, on the Knicks, the New York Knicks, on some generational run night right now.
Yeah, they won like a ton of games in a row, and they're probably going to win the NBA title. We'll see.
Okay.
And their best player is this like short guy with a really big head. He's like 6'1", and New York loves him because he's just like not supposed to be super athletic or super gifted, but he's like the best player, right? So it's incredible.
Right.
But like that's suspicious, right? You feel like he probably flops like a little bit, which he definitely does. He's like really good at starting and stopping, and he's not as bad as the guy from last series, the flop god that I told you about, that everybody hates.
Okay,
the two-time MVP. He's not as bad as him.
Sure.
But since everyone had been flaming him last week, I was like, I'm gonna test the waters a little bit and be like, you know what? I think Jalen Brunson flops a little bit too. But I worded it in like a pretty aggressive Twitter way. So I said, how long do we think until NBA Twitter realizes that Brunson flops just as much, if not more, than SGA? I give it 2 games.
Right.
And like this Twitter algorithm is engineered for hate because it didn't show it to like just the league fans that wouldn't care about it and be like, haha, move on. It immediately sent it to every New York Knicks fan in existence. And 378 of them replied and just called me all sorts of names. It got 500,000 impressions.
Oh.
And I knew as soon as it started getting the replies that I should probably delete it because it's actually way stronger than my belief, but I just didn't want to delete the tweet. And a part of me wanted to continue to rage bait. So I continued to rage bait some people in replies. It was a mistake. I actually had to mute the tweet. Like, it ruined my Twitter. I couldn't even look at it because the engagements were just people calling me really inappropriate names. But it was just a reminder that when you get flamed by KC or something, a lot of those people don't even know who you are.
That's true.
It just sends it to them because they know they're going to react to it.
That's correct. Yeah.
So pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, my comment of the week was from Rob Moore Esports, CEO of Sentinels. He said, Vedi and I were wrong. Masu showed up big for Jatt. I just want to commend him for, after a loss, still coming into the YouTube comments and taking accountability for his loss. Plus, we need Sentinels to perform, us North Americans, because they, no matter what, they're going to EWC. So
and who else is going
don't
to
embarrass us
EWC?
over there.
Who else?
We don't know. It's whoever wins spring.
Oh, it's the winner. I see.
So Lions, C9, or Teal. Yeah.
Fair enough.
So go Sentinels. You got this.
We'll see how they do. But right now, they're not the focus, are they?
No. The focus is Team WE, Vedius.
Okay, we can start with them. Yeah, I'm
who
down.
we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I did. I really wanted to talk about them because for the viewers at home right now, you're probably, if you're watching this podcast, you're not watching the LPL, which is fine. For Vedius viewers, you may have watched some of the LPL games, but right now, one of the most generational upset runs in playoffs history, I think, is happening. The only comparable example I could find, at least in the context of EU, is like the Schalke Miracle Run, basically. Right. When Schalke was basically guaranteed to not qualify to playoffs, and they had to win like 7 games in a row, and then they went and did it, and then they even won their first round in playoffs. It was like unbelievable, incredible, super hype, very fun to watch. But to give some context, over in the LPL, one of the first rounds of their playoffs was Team WE versus BLG. So BLG finished first at the end of the regular season. Team WE was 1-13. Okay, that was their regular season. They'd won 1 best of 3 out of 14. So naturally, everyone expected the first series to go the way as anyone would expect it to be, which was that BLG would clean 0-3-0 stomp them. That wasn't the case at all, though.
No, they won. But the 1-13 is part of what makes this so miraculous, and it is a bit of a quirk of the LPL format, to be completely honest, because there's never really been a 1-13 team that's allowed to play a playoff game in like the history of League of Legends.
That's true. That's true.
Because of what the LCK has done with Group Good and Group Bad in their split 3, and then now LPL has this like rolling format basically where every split they have like a group. I mean, in split 1 they had a Group Good, a Group Average, and a Group Bad. Right. And like the worst teams of Group Bad just don't get to play the remainder of the year. Pretty much. They actually kicked out 2 more teams in split 2. Like the 2 bottom teams of Group Bad just don't get to play in split 3. Right. So they're going from 14 teams to 12 teams. But essentially Team WE was the 8th place team of Group Good. And they only played against the other Group Good teams. Yes. And then in the play-in, they had to win a series against one of the best teams, actually the best team from Group Bad, to get in. But that still showed, like, the 1-13 it's a little strange, because if it was about the 12 teams, their record wouldn't have been 1-13. But the fact that they only played a round robin against the top 7 teams made it so they had a more depressed record. But it's interesting, because in an 8-team league, they'd still be last place if those were the only 8 teams. Yes. I just find it's one of those weird quirks that makes us more miraculous than ever, because you never get, like, a last place team never gets to play in playoffs unless it's this specific situation.
Yes, but don't they have 8 teams in that group? Isn't it 8?
They do.
So it's just basically...
they were the last place team of Group
Good. It's the bottom 4 of the top group versus the top 4 of the bottom team. And they play in a play-ins.
Yeah. And from what I recall... And they won that series.
Yeah, but what I recall, though, this is the key part, is that WE was the bottom, right? So they went against the top team. They won that best of 5. But every other team in the good group lost. Literally every other team lost. So WE had the best opponent that they could have faced against, beat them, whereas every other team that performed better than them in the regular season lost to whoever they played against from the bad group.
Correct.
And so then...
Pretty insane.
They then went on to play BLG 1. They then went on to play against JDG?
It was AL.
1. AL, you're right. Because then they played against Top Esports this weekend. But the reason why I just thought it was super important was because in the event that they qualify for MSI, it is unprecedented in the context of the LPL. Like,
it is.
It is.
I completely agree.
It is an incredibly challenging league because of how ruthless their formats often are. And normally you have to just be so consistent and so successful for such a long period of time. And my stream and I, like, they've been asking me to rewatch the WE games because they love spamming Monkey in the chat, which is the name of the WE jungler. But they've been really surprising and they've been a really fun team to watch. Now, my plan was to come into this Tuesday blind. So I had no idea who would win between Top Esports and WE, and I had successfully done that. I had genuinely done a really good job of avoiding any spoilers.
Which is insane.
That until Medic, out of the blue, on the day of the finals, just said, without a care in the world, oh, Top Esports qualified for MSI. That's what he said. He just dropped it. He legit just... And for context, Medic has just never talked about the LPL in his life. Like, he's never done that. Like, we never chat about the LPL. If it's like Rob, Dagda, I would speak to him, okay? Like, sometimes he would talk to me about things that's happening in the other. Hysterix is a big LPL fan. He could potentially spoil
and it was
for
Medic.
me. And it was Medic out of the blue. He's just browsing on his phone, and then he just, out of the blue, said, oh, Top Esports qualified for MSI. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. It was absolutely disappointing. So I don't know how they lost, but I do know that they haven't won. So now they get one more chance, I believe.
They get to play BLG again. So BLG has essentially recovered from their sins of losing to WE in the first place and creating this whole scenario.
Okay.
And they get a chance to now kick. They get to kick them out.
Oh,
so
God.
Winner of
the
that
rematch.
will not only go to MSI, but then play TES in the finals.
Okay. Goddamn. Damn.
Yeah.
Well,
it's gonna be. I'm gonna check it. I actually think, Vedius, you were overly ambitious in your attempt. You told me, I had no idea how you're gonna pull this off. You're like, I want to talk about Team WE on the podcast.
Yes.
But I also don't want to talk about their most recent series.
Yeah, I don't want to, because I still haven't watched it.
What am I gonna do? What is your chat gonna do? There's no way you get through this without.
Because I wanted people to know about the story. I wanted people to know how cool this was. Because I feel like that the LPL doesn't get great representation, which I think, given how everything is, like, obviously the LCK is just kind of where a lot of English viewers like to engage. And then obviously our podcast, which is EU and NA. But I wanted the viewers to know about this really awesome LPL story that was happening right now. Because I felt like that team deserved it. Because obviously you would expect the big powerhouses, BLG, JDG, AL, Top Esports even, like, these are the names that you should come to recognize internationally. So for a team like WE, especially with their record, I just really wanted to bring attention to that. And yeah, I felt like it was worth mentioning just because so many of these players you've never heard of as well. They're just completely, they're strangers to a lot. And I think it's a really awesome story. And even if they do fall short, I think that it's still a really impressive accomplishment what they did, and I think it's done a really good thing for the LPL. And it just demonstrates again how deep the talent pool really is in the LPL. Unlike,
I completely agree.
I mean, Knight obviously is the exception now, where whatever team he's on, everyone wins.
You're like, unlike the talent pool of our leagues.
Yeah,
just,
I mean, that's
completely
true, bro.
Shallow.
It's pretty much just
it's the top 3 and 4.
Yeah. It's pretty much just.
When's the last time we've had a miracle run?
When was the last time we had a miracle run? Tell me. Tell me.
Energy was the last.
Were they a miracle run?
They were 5th. They were 5th place.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, of 10. I mean, it's no 8th place, but like that's still pretty low.
Some people are saying 100 Thieves. Do 100 Thieves count?
I mean, pretty close, and that's literally last year. But it's weird because they were last place when they made the swap to Dokla. And then they went to Worlds top 2.
G2 was 7th in LEC versus. Medic, that's no. We're not gonna.
No. We don't get to do this. We don't get to do this.
Anyway, that was my tangent on W. They're really cool. They're really fun to watch. I'm probably going to rewatch their match at some point, maybe today. But yes, we'll see if they do qualify for MSI. And if they do, it's a very exciting time. But the good news for Europe, I don't know about you, but Top Esports is now at MSI. And that's great for us. That's really good news. We love that. Rooting for you, Top Esports. Really hoping that you take that first seed and EU gets to play you, ideally first round. That would be perfect for reasons unrelated to every time EU is played against Top Esports internationally. Cool. Great. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. I think timestamp enjoyers to move on to the LCS.
Yes.
Before we touch on the playoffs, Do you even know who won our All-Pro? Because we
No.
finally announced our regular season.
I have no idea. I think Thanatos got All Pro, right?
Correct. First team.
Yeah, I know nothing.
You can probably guess the first team.
Thanatos.
Yeah.
It's either Jose or Inspired, probably.
Jose, correct.
And then it's probably APA.
Saint, close.
Ew. Okay. Then Berserker, probably by landslide.
Yeah.
And then Vulcan.
Yep. Good job.
Okay.
Close. 4 to 5. Thanatos, Jose, Saint, Berserker, Vulcan. Second team was Morgan. Little controversial. Inspired, Quad, Masu, and Isles. And then third team was Gakos, Blabber, APA, Yawn, and Core JJ. So it turned out pretty much how I expected it to be. It was only the top 4 teams made it onto any of the 3 All-Pro teams. And then a few players from even the top teams got excluded. Like Dokla got excluded from the All-Pro teams. And then Sven was excluded from the All-Pro teams. Quid was excluded from the All-Pro teams.
Okay.
Griffin was excluded. And then Crowdgen was excluded. Of the top 4.
Griffin. Actually, to be fair, based on regular season, it makes sense that Griffin was excluded, yeah.
Well, and because the top 3 junglers are so stacked, right? It's Jose, Inspired, and Blabber.
Sure.
The only funny thing I wanted to point out from the voting was the clear attempts at manipulation from both LYON and Team Liquid to make their jungler the guy. Because you can't vote for yourself.
Correct.
But Inspired, as the LCS player representative, voted Blabber first team, Griffin second team, and Hombach third team. Okay. So he just excluded Jose.
He just excluded Jose, right?
And then Spawn, as the TL coach, did Hombach first team, Blabber second team, and Griffin third team. So it's just like actually Inspired, he's just not that guy.
The more I've come to realize, you know how like journalists and casters get a lot of shit for their votes? Mm-hmm. I feel like that we might have to be a little stricter on the pros because they are doing some stuff.
You could make it if we threw Spawn on the podcast right now. I'm sure he'd have his list of bullshit for why Hombach is actually the best jungler in the league.
Absolutely, he would. Yes.
And then we have Rob Moore in the comments being like, "This man speaks truth," and then we just carry on.
Yeah,
but pretty amazing. Sajed, like unprompted, Sajed also put Hombach best jungler, so Spawn wasn't even alone.
Right.
Either way, I don't think our All-Pro is necessarily controversial. There's always those little funny things you can pick out in the ballots. Sometimes it's people being cute. Sometimes it's people blatantly manipulating the vote. But, you know, it doesn't actually make too big of a difference. I need to check really quick. The LYON coach, Rainover, did Blabber, Griffin, Hombach. So he was in on it. And then Core JJ did Blabber. Core JJ was not in on it. He put Inspired second team. So this is why Core JJ continues to get the respect of the other players.
I have to address a comment. Someone said All-Pro is meaningless because regular season is meaningless. Okay, first of all, neither of those statements are true. Oh, we got to talk about this. Because that's what we're doing. We're going on a tangent. So regular season is functionally not meaningless. It is a seeding tool. Okay, it is a seeding tool designed to eliminate bad teams and to ideally put teams into appropriate spots coming into playoffs. Right? Now, we originally had a best of 1 format to do that, and now we use a best of 3. And on paper, the most accurate form of a seeding tool is effectively what the LCK do, which is double round robin best of 3, where each team plays a double round robin best of 3 because that would give you the most accurate seeding going into playoffs. Mm-hmm. In theory. It will never be perfect because humans are a variable, right? But in general, it should give you a pretty good indication, okay? Now, some of you will argue, well, G2 finished 3rd and then they ended up winning the split. So, is it really a good seeding tool? And I'm like, well, it put them in top 3. So it did effectively do its job of saying, well, the top teams are all relatively comparable. And I mean, Vitality just benefited a lot from the schedule. So I wouldn't say that that's a seeding problem. I'd say that's a scheduling problem, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But also the goal of All-Pro, first of all, is to acknowledge the performance from what is a very extensive regular season, but it's also supposed to generate discussion. It is intended and partially designed to somewhat rage bait you. I use the word somewhat only because a lot of the time people argue over nuance, right? There was a big fight between Kalista and Han Summer, right? oh, Hans Sommer should have been first. Hans was completely robbed. Hans should have been, and like, whether you're right or not, right? I think generally almost everyone can agree that Hans and Kalist was a top 3 AD carry from the split, right? Mm-hmm. And so depending on where you put him, in theory, shouldn't matter that much, but people do care. And so people talk. And so it generates conversation, it generates engagement, it gets people more invested in the league, and people then use it as ammo when the playoffs roll around. Knock-Knocko securing MVP, then getting knocked out. People like to bring that back up. People bring up the All-Pro. When Hans and Kalist faced in the first round of playoffs, the All-Pro was brought up again. And I imagine that after the All-Pro was announced in the LCS, you guys almost certainly said something along the lines of, the All-Pro X just got solo killed by Y. Tell me I'm wrong.
We don't announce MVP until next week, though. So we won't have the MVP just blah, blah, blah. And I've managed to not spoil myself because like Mark knows, and I'm sure a few other people already know because the vote's been done for like 3 weeks. But I don't know who the LCS MVP is going to be. I think it's actually going to be a really divisive vote. Your topic, though, about regular season not mattering triggered something in me.
Yes.
Because they're kind of right.
Okay, come on now. What are we doing? Why do we think they're right?
No.
Tell the chat that they're right.
He's kind of right because I think we've gone too far. I think we've gone too far into everything's a tournament and everything's a playoff.
Okay.
Do you know Major League Baseball in the early days didn't have playoffs? They had the American League and the National League, and they'd play the whole season. And then the 2 best teams in the standings would play in the World Series. They had no playoff for like 40 years.
Sure.
And that made the regular season for the top teams very meaningful. Like you actually had to win the most games of every team if you wanted to be the best team in baseball throughout the year. And so it's a problem, I think, with the current attention economy because literally
saying just
every
like
sport.
They're saying it's the same. Football doesn't have playoffs.
Yeah. There's a lot of European football leagues still do that. But like every sport I'm seeing is trending towards more playoff because I think you see the big number and the engagement spike from the playoff.
Right.
And you think we should do more of that. But I think if you go past a certain point, the playoffs become less meaningful because you haven't been able to build that generation and attachment from your regular season. And I think when you try and do 3 playoffs a year that then ladder into 3 international tournaments that also have a seeding phase into another playoff phase, like that's 6 playoffs in 10 months. Like what the hell are we doing? That's way too many.
I hear you. Preach. Because imagine a world championship where everyone played everyone. Best of 5s. And the top 2 played in the finals.
This is terrible.
Imagine it.
It's just a
top
big tournament.
2 played in the finals.
No regular season at all.
Everyone plays everyone. And then top 2 are in the finals.
So hold on. Like the round 1 is T1 versus SK Gaming? Is that...
No. Like, obviously, it's the teams that would qualify to Worlds. That's what I mean.
How do they qualify?
Well, from our regular... okay, don't overcomplicate this now, Jatt. Stay with me, Jatt, okay? We will keep the regular seasons, our splits the same, okay? Right now...
So only the teams from the summer split go to Worlds?
Right now, EU is sending KC and G2 to MSI, okay? You get to MSI. They play every other team that qualified to MSI.
And it takes the whole year. Is this...
No, not the whole year. We do it in 3 weeks. We slam it out.
There's no way.
There's one really big season wherever we are. And then the teams with the best records play in the final. Lock it in.
So
it's innovation.
I'm kind of with you into not having as many, like, the whole bracket into only kicking out like 1 or 2 teams is kind of lame. I personally want to eliminate more teams in our seeding phases to inject consequence into our seeding phases. I think we overqualify in general to the majority of our playoffs. With World Swiss Stage being the lone exception. Where that actually feels a little cutthroat.
Fair.
That's it. That's a lot, but that's it. If I do it again, max 2 splits into 2 tournaments, maybe even find a way. I know NA tried this once and it was a colossal failure, so it probably doesn't work for our sport. But like, just more regular season importance, I think would be cool.
This podcast has slowly become a format discussion podcast.
I know. We're cultivating our brand.
Weeks, we talk about formats.
Which triggered this other thing, though, that I was ranting about as we move on to LCS, because our results were Team Liquid beat FlyQuest and C9 lost to LYON. They got swept by LYON after being undefeated in the regular season.
Hilarious, by the way.
A lot of people find it funny. I do not, actually, as a fan of the league, because it just gives... It's just the worst thing.
Sorry, I have to call Medic out. This isn't spoilers. This is a podcast about EU and NA. You're going to get spoiled.
It's a podcast that's meant to spoil you.
That's why we do it on spoil. Tuesday. Okay, Medic, listen. I know you're new here, bro, but come on now. Stop rage baiting. That's very childish. Now, please continue. I'm sorry that he interrupted you there. I apologize.
Let's compare the benefits, the pros and cons of teams being consistent.
Yeah.
So G2, for instance, it doesn't matter what they do in the regular season, since they always kind of suck a bit in the regular season.
I think that's a little strong, but they underperformed compared to their standards.
Relative to their peak.
Yes.
Like, when's the last time they've been the number 1 seed? They're always like 2 to 5, or in the LEC versus 7.
If you look across their whole history, they've only ever been outside of the top 4 once, which was LEC versus at the beginning of this year.
Do you know how many times they've been number 1 in the regular season, though? It can't be that many.
Not off the top of my head. I mean, there are many because there was obviously... I mean, if you look at G2 as an org, there was the 2 years 2 years in a row where they just won everything. And then they... Yeah, so I don't know exactly how many. If you have a stats guy watching us, they could probably tell us. But I know
this
Hayden
is a stat for next
right
week.
Now.
Like, number of splits finished first in regular season versus number of splits where they've won the title. And I imagine their titles are double or triple the splits that they've finished first.
Probably not that extreme, but yes, I get the point.
Oh, I think it's triple. That's my guess.
Damn.
I'm gonna guess they finished first 5 times because they've won like 17 titles, right? It's insane.
They are at 17 titles. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say they finished first 6 times. That's my guess.
Actually, there might be 19 titles. I don't remember. It's a big number. Yeah, they're at 19 yet.
Yeah, he says 19 because you guys count everything as a title. You do like 2-week tournament. Title.
No, technically we don't. Don't get me into this because it triggers me. But technically we do have split titles and then championship titles. Okay, they are different technically. They are technically different.
Point being, the 1-team region of G2 is still beneficial to your region because people they have a large fan base that is able to come out of the woodwork every time they're in playoffs and celebrate their victory. And then they go internationally and they're a consistent representative for your region and they do well. And on top of that, they get to take that aura and power and just distribute it to other teams in the regular season. So like when LR beats G2, because G2 has this mythos around them, oh my God, we beat G2. And then Vitality gets to beat G2. And you're like, holy crap, that just elevates everyone.
Sure.
Cloud9 is the inverse of that. It's the absolute worst because they beat everyone in the regular season. And then if they never win the split, everything sucks. Like, it's just the worst possible outcome for the league.
But doesn't that just
mean... They beat everyone in the regular season, which just takes power away from them to build up C9, who then lose that power.
But no, counter-argument. So you're saying... But couldn't you just make the argument that a team like LYON is simply slumping? Couldn't you make that argument? You could say that LYON is your G2 equivalent, could you not?
Exactly. If Inspired continues to do this, then Inspired is just G2.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm down for that in the future, but they're not as established as G2 yet.
Okay.
Because currently it's just not there yet.
Sure. So
that's my frustration. And why I think it's really good if C9 wins.
My funny story about that is, so after our finals on Sunday, there was a small after party with the crew. I was going to go home, but some of the crew said, we're going to play some Riftbound. Would you like to play? And I said, absolutely.
This is a Riftbound story?
No, so hang on. So I play a couple of rounds of Riftbound and then I get home. I get home around 12:30. Okay? That's when I get home. And normally the LCS is on. So I'm like, oh, I'll sit down, pop the LCS on. So I open Twitch and it's not there. And I'm like, wait, I double check that it's Sunday, by the way. I've just cast the LEC finals and I'm like, is it Sunday? And so I check and there's no stream. And so at first I think I'll message Jatt and say, has something happened? And then I go, no, actually, I'll check the Reddit first, because if there was something, it would be posted there. And then I saw the post-match thread. The post-match thread was already up. And so I click it, unveiled the spoilers, 3-0. But it wasn't just a 3-0, it was like a stomp. I didn't watch it.
Well, okay.
But it seemed to have happened so fast that I couldn't even watch it, bro. Like, what are we...
Have you watched it since? Did you catch up or no?
No. I'm completely blind. I'm completely blind.
Okay. It wasn't that bad.
Okay, really?
So game 1
Yeah.
was actually very close.
Okay.
Right? We expected a close series. I'm gonna pull up.
Sorry, I just love that you're saying it wasn't that bad, and I immediately turn to the chat and people go, it was that bad.
It was that bad. He's coping. No, chat, listen. Game 1, 43 minutes. Very close. We have APA Ziggs and Sven Senna. Those are good picks for them. C9 is up like 3,000 gold at 35 minutes. Inspired had 2 like ridiculous smite steals / secures on Infernal Drakes, which gave LYON soul. And then with the soul, they also won an Elder fight, which also didn't immediately win them the game. Like, LYON really had to work for the win.
Okay.
APA Ziggs also had some weirdly really bad team fights. Okay. Like, I could show you a third dragon fight where he's like in the pit and he basically like ults himself, which hits no one. Okay. And then puts his satchel at the back of the pit rather than at the spot where he can jump out of the pit. And it puts him like right next to Sven, and they just both get killed by Saints Rise. It was really weird. And then even then they barely lost the fight. So game 1 was just really, really weird, where APA Ziggs somehow didn't team fight well when he always teams fight well, and they lose a close one. Game 2 was bad. I'm going to give that to you.
It was bad.
I think game 2 was definitely a LYON win where C9 didn't look that good. Game 3 was the weirdest one because LYON did some really weird cooking in draft. They flexed Jace jungle to put Sejuani top after C9 locked in Malphite. So, like, I'm all for flex picks and, like, countering a Malphite. Damn. But Sejuani does not counter Malphite. And then you still have Jace into Malphite in team fights. It functionally doesn't work. And then they're also running, they had Malphite, Rakan, Xin into an AD carry MF. You think that game's unplayable for the MF, right?
Sure.
14-0-5.
I did see that. That's what I saw in the comments when I was reading through the Reddit comments. They're all just literally like, how is it this difficult to get 1 kill onto Misfortune with this comp? Like he didn't dive what? But surely that's a Berserker masterclass, right?
It's a little bit of a Berserker masterclass.
Okay.
Like, MF is when good AD carries talk about MF, the champion does have its strengths. Emily talks about this too. It's really strong in lane, but it's kind of a fake champ because there are certain situations that you literally can't play if the other team controls you properly.
Okay.
Like, you're just not allowed to ult in some games if the team's disciplined enough with their cooldowns. Sure. But basically, C9 just kept full sending everything onto either Inspired or Saint if they were the first carry on screen, and they'd get that kill. And then they'd just kind of stick around, and Berserker would kill everyone. So game 3 was the weird one where I felt like C9 was very clearly pressing a little bit too hard and just continuing a little bit too far forward, which I then listened to some of the discussion afterwards. They had Sven on Pros, and I know C9 does their own podcast, which I haven't got a chance to see yet, but I'll definitely watch before finals this weekend. And it puts me in this really weird spot with them because I think every time we, the community or casters, watch C9 in playoffs, we think they choke.
Yeah. And
I think Sven at least was saying that he doesn't necessarily feel like he's doing anything different in these games. He doesn't even really think his teammates are doing that much different in these games. But there's this like case-by-case basis where they're playing a couple fights wrong. And then even Inspired did say, even though it was a 3-0, the games felt close. Like game 3, Inspired didn't really feel like he could do anything. He actually just said, I hope, like, as Jace, I need to just show up in a fight and die and hope they use cooldowns on me so that my team can carry. Like that was literally his strategy going into team fights because they didn't have the tools to win.
Yeah.
And then game 1, he also said was really hard. He thought they were going to lose until, they clutched up and won some team fights. So there's like 2 of the 3 games were arguably C9 favored analytically.
Yeah.
To quote Kenny Atkinson, I know you don't get that one, but it's an NBA reference. He got swept, and he had an interview where he was like, "We won like 2 of the games analytically, so I'm not that worried about it." And then they continued to get swept, which was just incredible. But I don't get it because based on everything I told you, they are choking. But every time they get pressed on it, after lock-in, Dom was like, "No, we didn't choke. We're just bad." Like, I understand that cope.
Sure.
And I think I saw a clip from Yamato on Power Spike who also just said, "Oh yeah, their roster is not good." And it's easy to say when they lose, which is why this team is so frustrating to me because they consistently do win in the regular season. And I do consistently think they actually underperform in high pressure situations, but I don't know how to fix that. And I don't like that the takeaway is usually, "Oh, actually they were never good. They're just bad." I do think that they play worse in these situations.
So
that was the recap.
There are viewers of this podcast that think I just hate NA, right? Which, just to be clear, I do. So now that that's out of the way, right? I have to be honest. I did say many weeks ago that I just think that the quality of your league is quite weak. I think
you get to do this when C9 takes all the regular season cash and just gives it away in playoffs.
No.
Okay.
What I mean by that is So when I look at a roster, often I judge its capability by its perceived ceiling. Okay? So the thing we've talked about this before, I believe, specifically you and I have. Like if we take a team outside of EU and NA, we'll just take BLG for example, right? A better example is T1. Okay? So T1, I don't actually remember the last time they won a domestic title. It's been a while, I think. I
think it was actually 2022 spring.
It may have been that long ago. Yeah.
Because they were the undefeated team going into that MSI.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, so they haven't won a domestic title in 4 years, but they've won 3 world championships in that time. Right?
Yeah.
So they are a great demonstration of a roster's ceiling and what players are capable of depending on their environment, right?
So you're saying because Cloud9 hasn't won a domestic title
hang on, don't jump, Jatt, Mr. Jatt, don't jump to conclusions.
If they go to Worlds, maybe
don't jump to no. Okay, this is cope on an astronomical level. This is quite like nuclear degrees of cope. My point is that when I look at T1, the intangible, non-analytical answer that you and I have often used on the broadcast is there are intangibles about T1 that you simply can't quantify, okay? Because on the day, all 5 players can simply show up and they are suddenly the best team in the world, right? And this is true for a couple of other teams. A team, I think BLG, for example, they are a team that regardless of when they slump, they can, on the day, show up and just be the best team in the world, right? So bringing this into consideration, if I think about these teams who I think have unbelievable ceilings, I often use them as benchmarks to compare other teams. So especially when I go into international events, this is what I use to judge like who I think are favorites, who are dark horses, blah, 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 blah. And also, like, credit to Cadril, I think he's very good at recognizing when a team is a very high ceiling. And when he did the whole big Weibo advocacy all those years ago when they ended up making the World Finals, like, a degree of it was memey, but if you really looked at how they made a lot of sequences, his basis was right in terms of their potential. Okay? Now, why is all of this relevant? I look at NA teams, and the thing that frustrates me is I feel like that there is no clear team that has an insanely high ceiling. I think you've got many teams with really talented pieces, but I think that you got really affected by the collapse of FlyQuest. Because I think that FlyQuest as a team genuinely had an exceptionally high ceiling, right? Yeah. And I think that if that roster, I know that they talked about how the roster had kind of reached its end, that they felt like that they couldn't go any further with it. But I think that they demonstrated so many times how high their ceiling really was. And really, like, I felt like that when they fumbled against Gen G, like, they lost because of draft. I don't think that was because their players weren't good enough to win.
Or even against BLG at MSI. Like,
Right.
that team 3-0'd Cubond and G2, actually.
Yes.
I know it was a younger version of that team.
It was a younger
but that
version,
peak was
yes.
exceptionally high.
Yeah. So it's a... And I feel like right now, the LCS just doesn't have that. They don't have a team that has players in every role where I see that ceiling as being... Because I look at LYON and I can't help but think, okay, I don't trust the support and I don't trust top. And for C9, I think that I am an advocate for bot lane. I know people are a bit of a Sven hater, but I know the ceiling of Sven. I know people will say...
And you haven't seen the last series yet.
That's also true. That's true. Yeah. But like the guy the players that I don't trust in that roster are Blabber and APA. I feel like I've seen their ceiling. I feel like I know what their cap is, and I feel like that it is limited, especially in contrast to a player like Inspired, who on the day can just show up. So for me, the reason why I feel I can be pretty confident in saying that like maybe C9 is just bad is because I think that in these matches, they're not actually like they're performing to their ceiling. Like when they have really good games, that is them overperforming, not their standard. And I know it sounds mega mean, and I'm sorry, LCS fans, I don't actually hate you. It's just kind of my read on C9 right now, in that why I struggle to believe in them is that I just think that the ceiling of APA is not that high. Like, I think that you have more potential in Quid. I don't know about Quad, but I would, if Quid was on that roster, on C9's roster, I would just have way more faith. Regardless of how his regular season was, and regardless of how good of a player you think he is right now, in my mind, I've seen what Quid can do. And I know in his potential, and I can see the vision for what that could be on the right day at the right time. And I just don't have it for APA. So to me, I feel like C9 is kind of performing as expected. That's kind of my perception.
I agree with most of what you said in terms of Cloud9's like absolute peak. But they're definitely like I'm calling cap on that they suck. I think they're actually
well. I mean, it's all relative, right? Of course they don't suck. Of course they don't.
Yeah,
like they could still probably.
There's definitely a level of underperforming in these higher pressure situations that is mixed with a little bit of luck. So I'm halfway between Sven saying that it's just a little bit of like case by case random chance, and they're actually just bad. I'm kind of right in the middle on that C9 take.
Because like to be completely honest, I think C9 could quite comfortably compete for a top 4 spot in EU. You know what I mean? Like that is where easily. Like I'm not concerned about that. It is just more, relatively speaking, I just kind of believe in Inspired's ability to 1v9 a game more than I do. And I'm jumping the gun. I think I'm going to believe in Team Liquid this time. I really think I'm going to do it.
So on that topic, we have Team Liquid versus FlyQuest, which we should touch on as well. Because in terms of ceiling, I think the reason so many people were excited about FlyQuest, because it felt like they had an extremely high ceiling because of the way they win when they win.
Absolutely.
And I liked what Inspired said on Pros this week. I think it was a better Pros episode, obviously, because we had Inspired and Sven on there, who are two of the best Pros guests. But Inspired was saying that they'd scrimmed against Team Liquid and FlyQuest on the week because they were preparing to play against C9, and that's literally the only 2 scrim opponents. And they actually lost a lot of scrims, but the way they lost the scrims was different. So Inspired was saying when we beat Team Liquid, he felt like it was LYON playing well.
Yes.
And when they lost to FlyQuest, he was just saying it's because they were just insane and crazy. They were playing super aggressive in all 3 lanes. Even if you made a counterplay, they'd be like diving the other side of the map. Like they were just making these absolute psycho, high pressure, high speed plays in every scrim. And Inspired just thought, yeah, there's no way they can replicate this on stage. Like they're playing way too free. They're not going to be able to do this. And I think he was right. I think they locked up a little bit against Team Liquid, being on stage. Also, for most of the split, not having fans, I think legitimately affected FlyQuest with how young their roster is. They're legitimately the youngest roster in all of Tier 1, which is a stat that we're spamming because it's actually very impressive when you include like all LCK, all LPL.
Wow, younger than LCK is actually quite surprising because they have a lot of
youngest roster in all of Tier 1 this year is this FlyQuest team. And I think they locked up just a little bit. The series was 3-1. And then on top of that, I do feel like Team Liquid figured a few things out in a sense. Like they managed to put Morgan on weak side pretty much every single game on a team fighting tank. So it didn't matter that he's not that great at connecting with the team. And his Ornn was actually really sick in game 4. It was actually very connected. And then the other thing was Quid actually got the team to play for him, which apparently hadn't really been happening. He was a little bit of a follower into what Jose or Core or LYON were doing, rather than them literally just like, Jose, what does Quid need? I'm literally going to do everything for Quid in lane and then team fights. And I'm going to break down a few things in the future, because there was a specific, we talked about the specific moment on last week's podcast against LYON where Quid was like in that bush and then the Poppy just like TP'd in and stunned him against the wall. But like that was an instance where the team just didn't have a unified vision of like how to contest a mid wave. So I'm going to go back and see, like, compare that play to other ways that they were contesting mid waves around Drake, because Jose mentioned as well on pros that they went over specific things in practice that then happened on stage, and it was comforting, saying, hey guys, we worked on this in practice, and they got to actually win the game through that.
That's good. That's what you love to hear. Yes, you love to hear that.
You rarely see that. And then the third thing would be Core JJ only played one enchanter in 4 games. So he played like Rakan, Bard, I think Rel, and then Melio in the last game. But it was the perfect pick for the slot.
Okay, Bard is a range support, just to be clear.
He's not an enchanter. I guess I should say he only played one enchanter.
Absolutely is still an enchanter.
Bard's not an enchanter. Nah, you can say because he has a heal, he's an enchanter, that he throws on the ground and has delayed effectiveness.
Brother,
every other skill is like a stun, a mobility, or a CC. He's not an enchanter.
His
That's like saying Airy, Moonstone,
over
Nautilus
half of his kit is utility.
Like he has one heal.
But he's also got
heal,
a
stun,
movement. He has a
movement,
movement.
and a CC.
His movement speed, I don't know, what would you count his portal as?
Lulu
People
has
saying,
like a shield,
Bard is a specialist?
a haste, and a slow.
Okay, we're getting into the technical definitions of enchanter. Fine, I'll concede. We can call him a specialist. That's fine. But he's definitely not a melee engage support. Okay, he's not a melee engage support. He's not getting that. Okay,
but they looked better, and their ceiling is technically quite high. It's the same ceiling of, like, if you look at when we talk about, we had this conversation last week of like how you evaluate players, and the easiest thing to evaluate is like how good are you in lane.
Sure.
And then the next thing you'll look at is mid game and team fighting and champion pool size. But like the very baseline is how good are you in lane, and it's part of why players like Dokla or APA have historically been undervalued, even if they have a lot of intangibles, because like the first check mark, maybe even like BrokenBlade at international events, right? Like they just don't win in lane against the top tier Koreans.
Sure.
Potentially the Team Liquid team can.
Hey,
right?
Don't slander BB. He's had his time periods where he's cooked the Korean top laners, okay? Just
with counter picks. Right? Yeah. Never on like Renekton versus Gnar. Okay. Never like the standard matchups.
No. He would never. No, sure. Okay. Renekton versus Gnar, you've got me there.
Yeah. But that's it. So next week we have.
So from what I remember though, I remember game 2 was a stomp for FlyQuest and game 1 was a stomp for TL.
Dude, when FlyQuest wins, they look so good.
Yeah.
That's they just stomped game 2 so smoothly. But let me pull up the series real quick to see exactly how the games went. Because game 2, as you mentioned, was a total stomp for FlyQuest. And then every other game went in the way of Liquid. So yeah, game 1 was, it was just a like really well played Jose game. 7 kills, 0 deaths, 14 assists, 100% kill participation on Jarvan. And then LYON Core JJ. Like, Core JJ found so many insane engages on Rakan, and they just kept killing Gakos.
Actually, that's a great point. So, chat did, in fact, just say that BB solo killed Chovy recently, actually.
Chovy?
Yes. It was Shen versus Azia at first stand.
Yes. With the TP interrupt. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Total solo kill.
It was a solo kill.
It happened. That's like when Impact led the league in solo kills because they kept trying to 2v1 dive him and he'd get solo kills with the help of the turret. Then he wins MVP in 2024.
Anyway, yes, you were saying, you're giving us a summary of the TL versus FlyQuest matchup. Yep.
Yeah. Game 3, Quid literally first picked Akali and then went 5-0-3. I don't think he can pull that off against many teams, but that shows confidence. And then game 4 was the Lucian Milo game we talked about where Quid did 45% of the team's damage on Victor. So they just smashed. They just played really well.
Quid finally showed up. Well, again, I guess, because he showed up last week.
He won Player of the Series 2 weeks in a row now. Like he's back to MVP
He's
form.
Back.
Which brings us Which brings us to next week. Team Liquid versus C9.
Well, no, hang on. Before you end that,
what's your prediction, Vedi?
Is there any final thing for FlyQuest? Because obviously they were a big hype.
Sure.
We hyped them up a lot last week. What are we thinking about their general trajectory? How excited are we for summer? Do we think they should make any changes? Blah, 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 blah.
Oh, this is good. Definitely no changes. Keep literally everything as is. Keep grinding solo queue and
not
keep
replace support. Keep the support.
Definitely keep the support. Crougen went from tier 3 to pro and has had such a fast glow up to getting a bunch of 2v2 kills with Masu. He's going to keep developing.
Okay.
They have the coaching staff for it. They have the infrastructure for it. Like they're just keep going. Just keep going. Maybe if at the end of the year, if they don't go Worlds, maybe they'll make a change, but just keep everything.
So you think that maybe not maybe this year, but maybe next year they could be competing for the top?
I think in summer split they could win.
I don't.
I know. It's a long shot.
You overestimate
We're gonna clip this.
Rate of growth.
Papa Smithy's going to clip this.
That's fine. Papa Smithy can clip this.
Yeah.
If he watches it,
yeah.
He should also make a video about our podcast and how we're killing the esports scene. That would also be helpful for us. Now,
oh my God. No.
Let's talk more about FlyQuest. So for me, I think that like when we think about potential and ceiling, I've been mega impressed with Masu. I think Masu has been a standout for me. Mm-hmm. I'm pleasantly surprised because I think that when you're on a team with Inspired, it's easy to look good, is the truth. Mm-hmm. And I think in the same way that, like, I was recently looking this up, okay? So, like, you know how Caps just kind of has magic? If you're on a team with Caps, your odds of winning the splits just infinitely increase, right? Mm-hmm. Like, did you know, like, Flackhead and Targamas are LEC champions. Like, they're just LEC champions. And it's, like... And they may have played super well. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from their contribution to that G2 roster, but, like, they don't even play on teams in Tier 1 anymore. And it's one of those things where I think that when you play on a team with certain players, you tend to just be elevated. And so for Masu, my concern was when you're not on a roster with Inspired, do you just look worse? You know? But I think the opposite has happened. I think that he's demonstrated how skilled and talented of a player he is. And I think that he... shout out to the person in chat. Targamas did also win with KC2. That is completely fair. That is valid. He's a 2-time LEC champion. My bad. Meant no slander. I genuinely didn't. But yeah. So it's one of those things where, like, pleasantly surprised with Masu. I think Quad, I feel like I have seen his ceiling. But in the context of NA, I don't think that ceiling is, like, he can still win a split, you know? I don't think that it's... and then, yeah, it's just the rate of can Gatghost play more than just carries. Because I love that your stat that you guys had, where it's like him on carries versus him not on carries.
I know. His tank play does need to improve. But at the same time, I do like the play style they're developing, where they're trying to pressure every lane and play extremely fast. Sure. So I don't know if I'd, like, over-prioritize. You need to learn how to do weak-side tanks. Because that just kind of turns them into every other team. And they almost made it work. So I'm kind of down for whatever ThinkCard and Gatghost plan. We have max 40 minutes to do LEC because of my time constraints.
Sure.
But what you just talked about in terms of elevation, I need your opinion on this. There was an Arsh tweet. He's the guy who runs NAMN.
Okay.
The interview website.
Sure.
He was, I think BrokenBlade has like 11 titles now.
Yeah.
And Arsh was saying, doesn't this just make him the LEC top lane GOAT? But then the comments were debating, well, he won all of these with Caps.
He did.
He won one in NA with Doublelift and Bjergsen, and then he's won a bunch in there. Because everyone else was kind of like, well, Wonder won MSI, went to World Final, also went to World Semis without Caps. That makes it better.
No, he did.
But I'm curious, you like, well, no, the World Semi he did without Caps. He did MSI with Caps. The World Semi when they beat RNG was
Oh, you're right. Yes, he did
Exodus.
Do that with Perks. Yes, you're right. He did do that.
So I'm just curious, like, the way BB's legacy is currently imprinted in your mind, is it too much just like he was on a team with Caps? Because I think it's really interesting.
It is interesting because, like, to me, you'd be right that the top lane GOAT to me is still Wonder. Like, it's hard to...
But if you look at total accomplishments, it's way less.
Well, in terms
of domestic titles.
That then brings up the question of how much do we weigh accomplishments, because Yike has the highest number of jungle titles. But
more than Yankos.
The format changed. So when Yike joined the league, we moved to a 4-split format with 3 splits and a championship at the end.
Yeah.
And of those 8 that he played on with G2, he won 7 of them, with Mad Lions being the only team to take
it's just
him
unfair.
off.
That's like 4 years worth of titles.
But that's what I mean. So BB's titles are effectively inflated because he was part of that roster that won the Grand Slam, which is G2 is the only team in LEC to win everything domestically in the year. Obviously outside of old G2 and old Fnatic that would win back-to-back splits, right? So the debate should ultimately be how much do you weigh titles as being a representative. And the thing about BB is you're right that he is one of the few that's won both NA and EU, which is not an easy accomplishment. But do you hold it against him the fact that internationally, I think his highest placement ever is top 4 at MSI?
I mean, it would be first stand finals, but otherwise,
yes,
it's
you are right. It would be first stand
or
finals. You are right. Yes.
But first stand, that tournament's actually not aging that well, with little BNK Furex being 100th place over in LCK, and Gen.G maybe not going to MSI, but I think it's still better than 4th place MSI for sure.
I guess the question, someone actually proposed a really interesting question. If Caps went to NA, would he not win? And I guess that's one thing you could ask is, if you were to put BB on an NA, if you were to just put BB on C9 or put BB on LYON. Well, I think if you put BB on LYON, I think LYON instantly becomes favorite and they win everything, is my take.
I mean, they're already winning everything, so I think they continue to. That's just like that. Put him in the same situation again. Here, join the best team.
Yeah.
But like, does putting BB on C9 or TL let them win?
Yeah.
Over LYON. I think that's kind of the rubric. Because I think putting Caps on C9, they instantly win.
I mean, it's a really interesting conversation. Like, we could talk about it for ages, which I don't particularly want to do.
Anyway, no, we don't need to do that.
Yeah, but it's a hard one.
There's
for sure.
There's too much LEC stuff.
Titles are inflated. But yes, as we transition to LEC, I just need to tell the viewers at home, if you've just joined us now for the timestamp, Sunday was my last cast for a while. I will be going on sabbatical on Monday. So for the LEC fans, the LEC viewers of this podcast, if you are a fan of me, thank you. Appreciate that. But you will not see me at MSI, and you will not see me for most of Summer Split. I will be back week 2 of Summer Playoffs, but as I've been at Riot for a very long time, I've gotten to take advantage of the sabbatical program that Dracos took advantage of the last, several months. So, yeah, I'm going to be off. But the good news is I will still be doing this podcast with Jatt. I've really enjoyed doing the podcast. Tuesdays in the future will probably be me just rewatching a bunch of the LEC games, and so that's how we'll cover the LEC. I obviously probably won't have the same expertise, so Jatt might fire me, but we'll do our best and we'll see. So the podcast will still
if we try and cover LEC and you're like, well, I didn't watch this week, and I'm like, Vedius, neither did I. And what are we going to talk about?
Yeah. So
well, it looks like Caps had 6 kills today.
Yeah, well, I'll just read Games of Legends and then let you know. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But to round out how the LEC ended, we have to start with Saturday, which saw a rematch of KC versus KOI. Heated rivalry, eBay versus Kometo, France versus Spain, insanely hype. It was supposed to be. It was the complete opposite of hype. It was a massive disappointment. KC completely steamrolled them. Jojo had the worst performance of all year, I would say. LYON was making so many bad decisions. He was overforcing so many plays. Like, normally I look at Super and Mirwin as points of criticism. Super was super consistent, and I felt like that the bot lane was not really a problem, but the mid jungle just wasn't there. They did not show up at all in the series.
I wanted to ask you for a blame tier list, because they essentially lost 6 games in a row into missing MSI. They got reverse swept by G2 into swept by KC.
No, they didn't get reverse swept. It was
Did they not?
No. KOI went up 2-1 in the series. Yeah.
Damn. That's
so
not
they lost
cool.
5 games in a row, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, fair. I'm double
checking.
Wait,
they did? No, they did.
Are you gaslighting me?
Swept. I genuinely didn't think that it was a reverse sweep. It was. They're all saying it was a reverse sweep. There you go. Good job. Great research. Great representation of what's going to happen when I got sabbatical. Okay, yeah. So they got reverse swept. You're right. Continue your point. Yeah, 6-0. What was your point?
I mean, That's it. You need to. I wanted your opinion on the tier list of blame because there was one point. I understand why you did it when you were casting because I'm in and out of being able to listen to your audio when I watch these LEC games because I'm doing other stuff.
Sure.
But in game 3, when JoJo was flanking on Yasuo and he gets caught by Kennen and like nearly kills him, he like lands Q3 ults, but then it was the finals. The Lulu ult comes in.
Yes.
And saves him. Sorry, semifinals because it's freaking JoJo.
Yeah.
And then he escapes and JoJo dies, and then they all go in to win the team fight. You had one line where you just like slipped it in because I think you meant that JoJo like played the interaction well. Yeah. But you're like, great job by JoJo. And then the rest of the team flies in. And I'm like, brother, he just got caught. Are you still on team? Because you were running these like Vedi was right. JoJo's the best player in LEC.
Just to be clear, that wasn't my graphic, okay? I didn't ask for that graphic, nor did I want it. I had no idea that graphic was made, okay? Jake just fucking made it. Which, for the record, I got flamed for. Like, people were just like, what do you mean Vedi was right? Like, he's fucking... JoJo's playing like ass right now. And I'm like, I didn't ask for that graphic. All I wanted was a JoJo is still good graphic, which he was up until that point. Okay? I didn't ask for that. And then Jake puts my fucking face on it. Oh, my God. Stuff. And it's so...
Okay, so...
Yes, continue.
Reddit thread said LYON was to blame.
He was pretty bad.
And it's more like, based on expectations, it's kind of like LYON, JoJo Mirwin.
Okay, so LYON had a bad series, yes. But I think what was more indicative is that in the past, I mean, you've experienced this too. You know Bjergsen and 4 wards? If Bjergsen's having a bad game, the team is not going to win. And then G2, it's had it before. If Caps isn't winning, then the team isn't winning. Like, I think that is coy. If JoJo isn't playing well, then they don't even get a foot in the door, which is very sad. That's very sad. Because I feel like that a top team should be able to compensate for someone having a bad game, which, for example, when we get onto the finals, I don't think Caps was having the best series of his life. But everyone else steps up around him, you know? And normally LYON is the guy that would step up in that role. And if you think back to LEC versus, like when he locked in Kiana, for example, I want to say it was game 4 versus KC. That's exactly what he did, you know? He stepped up, he became the carry, he showed up. And so that it was mega disappointing from the mid jungle. I don't really love pointing blame, quite frankly, because I don't remember the series super well. All I remember, my experience was, wow, that was underwhelming and disappointing. Like, it was...
Yeah.
I really didn't like it. I felt... I need to check now. I seem to remember thinking to myself, that game 3 draft was really bad, which is just a thing I keep saying about MKOI now. But they definitely also were in positions where it was playable, and then they just threw. We'll talk about bad drafts when we get to the final, don't get me wrong. But yes, I'm just going to quickly double check.
I have questions.
MKOI versus KC. So
you said the game 3 draft was bad?
It was the Annie top lane into... Yes, they did Annie, Wukong, Yasuo, Corki, Nami.
Yasuo to counter the TF mid, / to follow the TF because the TF could have been flex top lane, which made it flexible.
Yes.
And then they last picked the Annie because they probably also... I mean, the Annie's just a little weird.
Well, the Annie was supposed to be a Mirwin good matchup into Kennen, is the logic.
Yeah.
And then they draft a bit of a
Otherwise,
team fight
Kennen
comp.
wins lane.
But yeah, KC gets... They get Yunara Lulu. I think at that point, they're already outscaling. They've then got enough CC with Kennen on Kana on Kennen. And with Xin Zhao, I don't know. This draft wasn't as egregious, I will admit. But I didn't love it. And I felt like that their game 2, I want to say, was pretty winnable. And then they had some really horrendous plays. But the story of the series was basically KC out-team fought them every single time. Every team fight, every 5v5, KC smashed them. And yeah, it felt like all year, KC's continued to have their number. I think in the post, in the PGL, they also talked about how like they've just kind of downloaded them and they feel like they read them really well. Which was really, really disappointing from MKOI. I really had high expectations. I predicted that they would win 3-2. And that wasn't even remotely close. I was about as wrong as I could be. So
I got this one right.
That sucked. So we move on to the finals, which was G2 versus KC. Rematch
which
of
is a
LEC
rematch
versus.
of the LEC versus, yeah.
Yes, and that one went. That one is actually considered one of the best finals of all time to many viewers.
This one
was,
right now?
No,
or
no, no. The
LEC
one in
versus
LEC
one?
versus. The one in LEC versus. Just because of how
you've had a
things
couple of
ended.
bangers. You guys are getting good 5-game series to end your.
Yeah, but the narrative
splits.
going in was pretty much that Skumond is Yike's father, and what a series Mr. Skumond had. I saw some comments. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I saw some comments where basically people are now saying that Skumond is the next Caps, which I think is wow, high praise for the young man. And it was an intense series because it felt genuinely like KC had a game plan, which was that they were better team fighters than G2. And so when they drafted for scaling, when the games were slower, and when they got to play for the 5v5, they would win. Where G2 were better at kind of making side lane plays, they were better at catching their opponents out, they were faster, and Skumond was just a monster. When Skumond had a lead, he simply dominated. Someone found a stat for me. Shout out to Reddit. I don't know who the credit goes to. I think it was in the finals MVP thread. But Skumond went deathless in all of G2's wins.
Yes.
Which is phenomenal.
But also the last two was like
he went 12-0, 12-0. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Pantheon Nasus.
He was awesome series from him. Absolutely awesome series from Skumond. I did mention Caps underperformed a bit. People in the chat were saying that he was sick. I did hear about him being sick. But I don't think that stopped some of his inting. Like, there was a play on Aurora that he did. I want to say it was on game 3, where he just ran up, tried to one-shot the Corki. No team behind him. Just dies. He just died. So it was pretty...
Wait, who'd you say was
Caps.
sick? Yahoo? Or Caps? Oh, okay.
Caps was sick, yeah. Caps did make some pretty egregious errors. He did compensate for that. Like, I think his Annie game was pretty good. And then I think his Anivia game in game 5 was also really strong. But yeah, really, the series was very much about Skumond versus Yike. And if Yike could keep a slower, controlled game, then it went the way of KC. And then if G2 could play faster, enable Skumond, then it usually went the way of G2. So it was honestly... someone shouted out, Caps had a good Ari game. He also did have a very good Ari game, that's true. So... it was genuinely a fun series, very back and forth. I think both teams demonstrated clear strengths and weaknesses. The series ultimately, I think, was decided. I will say that I think both G2 and KC are fairly similarly matched in terms of skill. I'm quite happy that they are our representatives. I think that they're both pretty solid teams. I think a lot of it was decided by draft. I think game 1, the draft from G2 was hard to play. It was Dagged and I talked a lot about how, like, I think that KC had an easier to execute comp. G2 had to do very specific things. They were getting actually really good at doing what they needed to do with the comp. And then they made a mistake and then it ended up hurting them. They then fixed their draft in game 2 and they had way more options. They could be a lot more proactive and make more plays. And then game 5 is really kind of it was a colossal draft gap. It was colossal. And I would love to speak to Reaped, I guess, or the KC staff, and like, what game 5 Nidalee top? We're gonna last pick Nidalee top.
I've been thinking about this.
Okay,
I have a number of shit posts.
You have shit posts.
I have shit posts, but I didn't want to interrupt you because you were being serious.
Okay,
but I think I'm going to do the real analysis, and I might not have time to get the shit post in.
Okay.
I actually think I've thought about this draft a decent amount. I think this Game 5 KC draft, the mistake was not as much the Nidalee, as it was not taking second pick. Because I'm just thinking about the way these teams draft, right? KC had been doing so much work getting Kana winning matchups and being flexible.
Sure.
And likewise, BrokenBlade like lives off of his weird champions and his counter picks. So having last pick with that pinched of champion pools is really valuable. So like, obviously leaving Nasus open when Skumond's been playing it in solo queue is also a huge blunder. Like, they banned Yasuo Olaf in the 4-5. when they could have just thrown a ban at Nasus, but they didn't realize they were playing against Griffin.
Well, no, that's not. I don't think that was. They clearly they had a game plan around Varus top, like that was clearly their game 5 approach, which is why they
wanted to
prioritized
have the flexibility of playing Varus, but then too many AD carries got banned, and Kalist didn't have anything to play.
But you don't ban Olaf and whatever else they banned without the intention of picking Varus top. That is what they're doing there.
I guess. But then did they just think like they got headshot with Jinx MF? Like if it's really all about playing a hyper carry, like just play freaking Aphelios. But they already locked in Poppy, who's not a good Aphelios thing. So
yeah,
like,
the
there
Poppy
are a lot
was
of
the Poppy
with
I
the
think
draft.
was somewhat egregious, because to me I felt like that they'd already hamstringed themselves a little bit when they. Can you just, for the viewers at home, can you just run through what their draft was and ideally the pick order?
Okay. I mean, it's a little bit hard to do in Game 5 of Fearless because you don't get full context of what they don't have available. But it was a first pick Varus into Anivia Alistair by G2.
Yes.
And then KC goes Poppy Akali.
Yes.
Which
now,
I think is another thing we can get in on.
That part to me was really egregious.
I'll keep going. Then G2 lock in Senna. So you know their whole bot lane and a flex pick Anivia because it's G2.
Sure.
The bans, as we mentioned, G2 ban MF Jinx to pinch the AD carry pool. KC ban Yasuo Olaf because they're likely trying to protect the Varus. And then G2 picks Nasus on 4, which is matched by Aatrox Nidalee before last pick Kled. I think once the Nasus is locked in, I don't see a way of fully salvaging it with those last 2 picks.
No. I agree. So I think that I thought the Poppy was going jungle, but they clearly picked it in response to seeing the Alistair and thought it was the best pick. I feel like that they always had Braum as an option, and I think that they should have put a higher priority on getting something better in jungle.
I think Braum actually would have been pretty good if they wanted to just throw Poppy top. But so much, I even look back at their drafts against
was
MKOI.
Braum banned?
They found so much success being blue side and blind picking Kana a lane bully and daring the other team to counterpick it. Like that consistently worked for them across the whole playoffs.
Sure.
Like they did it with Rumble. They've done it with Jace. They do it with Kennen. Like they just pick him a good laner and say he's better than your guy so they can essentially blind pick a winning lane, which I've talked about being insanely valuable for top laners. And that's all they were trying to do with the Nidalee. They're just trying to blind pick a winning lane. And since they were game 5 Fearless, there was nothing else left.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, yes. The logic in isolation makes sense, but I very much agree with you that the Nidalee in isolation wasn't why they lost the game, right? Like, I think that the most egregious play there was the Poppy Akali slam. Because it just... So I'm not a pro player, but I'd like to think that I've cast enough games that that even though I don't play at a high level, that I play a lot of Akali. Like I play a lot of Akali. I'm a one trick, okay? And I'm not good.
I heard you in cast. Yeah.
Yes.
If you're one trick and you're a high level player, you can speak on this. I'll allow you to have your Akali
But basically the main issue with your matchup into Anivia is not that you can't kill her, it's that you can't kill her twice. So you can put her into her egg, but you basically have to use everything to put her into the egg, and then you literally can't kill the egg. You just can't do it because you don't. You won't have enough energy. Your ult will be off cooldown, will be on cooldown. You just can't. You just can't. You can't kill her, right? And Anivia wants to build HP. Which is Akali's worst nightmare. Yeah. Like obviously resistances also help, which there's no reason why Anivia can't go Merc Treads, which means that she'll get the upgraded Merc Boots. But it's just, in my mind, it's just not a good matchup. The only reason why they would pick it is that they want to flex it top. So they're sitting there thinking to themselves, I don't know if Nara had been picked or banned at that point in the series, but they might be thinking to themselves, we put the Akali top, we take the Poppy away from them because we're worried about them slamming Poppy jungle, and then we can flex the Akali to top lane, put Varus in AD carry. But at that point, I think that they're really overcooking. You know, like they're really overcomplicating the draft. Whereas G2 came in with the game plan of we're just going to hyperscale Senna, Anivia, and then just play for stacks on stacks. Apparently, the Narcissus was such a good pick. It was so good. I don't know where he got the inspiration. I don't know if Law asked him in the Finals MVP interview, but yeah, it was fantastic.
Twitter's done some sleuthing for me on who should get credit for Nasus.
Okay.
I would love to say it's Griffin because he did the tweet that went viral about it when he was in Korea.
I gave him the
However,
shout-out.
Twitter's told me SkyArt was actually the first one to popularize it French streamer SkyArt.
Oh.
So maybe that could have happened. But then also the day
he
before.
said Griffin. No, they all said in chat. They're all saying he said Griffin in the
It's
interview.
Griffin. Let's
there
go.
You go.
Which then LS can take credit for that too. But Tatu for Furia also played Nasus in game 4 of their win to qualify for MSI.
Oh.
So Nasus like exploded this weekend in terms of its popularity as a jungler. So it's actually a pick you have to account for.
I mean, shout out to LS. The beauty of Fearless has not fully been grasped. I think that picks like Nasus are a great example of how teams can take advantage of Fearless and why now more than ever having a deep champion pool is an advantage. And this is kind of where like the separation comes from in my mind for KC. KC are about as close to a European Gen G as you're going to get, right? They are generally very consistent laners. They are a very good team fighting team. Their general macro is very good. Yike is a very controlly jungler. He doesn't really demand a lot of resources, but he's very aware of where he can be and what he can punish on the map. But they usually play fairly stock standard comps. They're not super creative like Yahoo. You could almost assume it's like Ryze, Annie, Azir.
Kana is all of their creativity. Kana is their creativity.
Yes, Kana is... And I was talking about this on the cast. Imagine having Kana on your team, right? Where basically, do you know how rare it is for a European team to just sit there and go, yeah, you can pick, like, we never have to worry. You'll have something. You'll always have something that you can play. Whether it's a blind pick or, like, you can blind pick Renekton and be fine in whatever matchup they pick for you, you know? And I sit there and think,
you can pick Nidalee in game 5 and it'll be okay.
What a luxury it must be to have someone like Kana on your team, I just feel. But I do think that overall, KC do have some draft limitations. Some, in that when you go super deep in a 5v in a best of 5, that is just where G2 has the advantage, and that's where I think G2 demonstrated the advantage. But what's crazy to think is if G2 hadn't done the Flash Soraka Malphite ult combo, Koi would have locked in a spot in the finals,
and
MSI. G2 and KC would have been fighting for that spot. That's what happened.
You're probably pretty happy at this point that happened,
I am happy.
Right?
I am happy.
Yeah.
Yes. Based on
you
how
feel like
things
Koi are
transpired.
fraudulent.
Yeah. I am completely happy. Yes.
Last point on Game 5 Fearless Draft, which I need to... I hope I'm the one that coins this take, and then people can give me credit when it happens.
Sure.
I think Game 5 drafting for scaling is just what you have to do.
Like Game 5 Jinx, for example?
Game 5 Fearless, you just have to have better team fighting. Because I don't think the lane counters at that stage of Fearless are almost ever severe enough to stop you from winning the game, on top of the pressure of a Game 5, which makes people play more hesitant. So the better scaling team, more than any other game in Fearless, is likely to win in Game 5.
Yeah, I generally agree with you, yeah. Unless you're playing as BLG, in which case they will put their foot down your throat, which they will.
We'll see. I'm still going to pick scaling. I'm not going to try and compete with them early game in Game 5 Fearless.
I would never pick just full scaling.
What, you think I'm going to try and counterpick Bin in Game 5 of Fearless? What are we doing? No, just scale. If Sion or Ornn are still up, lock that shit in.
I mean, yeah, of course Sion. Yeah, Game 5. Sion's been left up the whole series, bro.
I mean, Ornn was available, no? Yeah, Ornn was available. They could have just popped that on.
Well, anyway, in general, I agree with you. In general, as a rule of thumb, I mean, Kadril and I used to talk about it, where it's just kind of like a Game 5 Slam Jinx. It's almost always the most effective counterplay. Game 5 Slam Jinx. Slam Jinx plus Enchanter. Slam Jinx. Jinx Yuumi, Jinx Lulu, Jinx something, but Jinx Game 5, OP. It is the OP tech.
Okay, we don't have long. I need to get my shitposts in. You know how I talk about intentionally delaying the show during hype matches to get more viewers in?
Yes.
I feel like you guys did this. I tuned in on time for Game 5, and you didn't start Champ Select until like 25 minutes past the hour.
Did you see what happened?
No, I only tuned in like 20 minutes late because I was looking for the game.
I can give some context on this. So basically, BB's account basically broke, right? It just straight up broke. Like something about his account went wrong, and he was still on stage trying to fix it. And we had Roman randomly walk up and interview him. Like it was quite funny.
So you didn't just add more pomp and circumstance to your pre-show.
But then, right? So their solution was, we'll just give him a new account. We'll just make him a brand new account right now. Have him log in on that, and then he'll just do his settings and we'll be good, right? Okay. Which from what I understand, they can do pretty good. But then they had an issue with renaming him. So I to my producer, messaged the caster producer. His name's Arna. I messaged him and I was like, he can just use the Vedius one if he wants. I'm okay with that.
Oh my god. And he's playing as Vedius in the final.
That would be so funny.
That would be real good.
You just see Vedius in top lane. I was legit like, my producer was laughing so much. He was just like,
terrible idea.
No, but guys, it wouldn't be G2 Vedius because they were having issues. It would just be Vedius. They would just literally, he'd be logged in as Vedius in top lane.
Well, the overlay changes it now, right? I think they can custom make the names in overlay.
Maybe?
But then even in game.
But the thing is, they take it from the API, I think, in the game. That's how the whole system works.
Yeah.
So that would I did pitch it. They were against it, chat. I don't know why, but I did propose it.
All right, second shitpost. Do you think G2 won against KC because they have more French players?
Ooh.
Skewmon and Hansama. They're more Skewmon did win player of the series.
One French player did play better than another French player. That is true.
You never know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to remember, Kalist did kind of body Hansama in that final game. He did solo kill him twice.
Yeah, true. But he stole... Kalist is actually responsible for top lane Varus. So he stole Kana's power in order to look good in the loss. Very, very dishonorable by Kalist.
Fair.
And then I had one about KC is actually an NA team. They have 2 Korean solo laners, 1 NA player, so they'd fit right in the LCS.
Okay, technically, it's not even technically. Busio is Polish on this roster.
I know he is, but come on. We know he's NA. He's technically...
So does that mean Bjergsen was European the whole time?
Ooh, interesting. Interesting take. Very interesting take.
Because I just want to say, Azael has always hit me with he's been playing in NA for so long now, he's basically American. And I'm like, well, how long does Jojo and Busio got to play in Europe before they're basically European?
This is a good theoretical. He's not European yet. I'll give you that. Bjergsen was not North American. I mean, he was pretty North American pretty fast. He was wearing the Burger King hat instantly.
I'll tell you what. Jojo can be North American in that series versus KC. Okay? That he was pretty North. Yeah, that seems fair, no?
Pretty NA.
pretty on NA. I love, by the way, that APA... I saw, was it APA that tweeted Jojo dodging me at MSI once again? And then he ends up losing to LYON.
He could still make it to MSI.
True, he could still make it.
We have to do predictions. We have to do NA predictions. I know we
can wrap up the episode. Sure.
Yeah.
I'll predict TL to win.
The whole thing?
No, LYON will win the whole thing.
Yeah,
but I'll predict
we're both
TL
predicting LYON to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
I need to be consistent this year. I said LYON is going to win the whole thing, no matter what happens in the regular season, and they seem to have turned it on at the last second. I was actually thinking they're going to drop to lower bracket, but they didn't, which makes me a little more hesitant. So I give them like a 60% chance of winning, maybe 65.
Okay.
It'll depend on how Saturday goes, but they're the favorite, and I don't really want to. I don't want to predict either of these teams because I just think it's going to be wrong. No matter who I predict, the opposite is going to happen.
Okay.
Because Team Liquid did seem like they figured something out, but they were also playing FlyQuest, who I think got a little nervous. Potentially, all the pressure is off C9, you would think, but they also spiraled like crazy after their last loss. Like the last time they lost to LYON, they then went to America's Cup, and then we forgot that it happened.
True.
But now they get to go to Arizona, and we have no idea what's happening. So it is hard to think that they're going to recover from this. So I really want C9 to go international because of what we talked about earlier. Because they keep dominating the regular season. They need to find a way.
Turn the analyst brain on. Come on now, lock in. Who do you think? Because I don't have to be analytical for North America. I can just say whatever I want.
I know. You can.
So come on now. You did predict the KC win. You get that W over KOI.
I did. And then I almost predicted over G2 if it wasn't for Reaper.
It was close. If it wasn't for, you're going to blame him. That's why.
Sure. Let's pick that.
I mean, draft was 100% why they lost game 5. There's no debate there. Are you rooting for Dom or are you a Dom hater? Come on now.
No, I'm rooting for him. He gave up a more lucrative, more popular career in order to coach. So I'm all for that. Like,
that's true.
He is fully committed on that team. That's super honorable. And I think he's doing a good job. And I like both of these teams a lot. So you're telling me to turn my analyst brain on. I haven't done my full research. Literally based off last week, it would have to be Team Liquid. But based on the year in totality, it would be C9 because they have more clutch plays in regular season, but then they're never clutch in playoffs. So it would have to be TL. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about it.
What's the score, though?
Oh, if TL wins, it's like a 3-0. Like if TL wins, it's because C9 hasn't been able to
3-2 TL
to recover.
3-2 TL.
Okay. Sure. We'll both go TL. Every time I jump off the TL bandwagon, they win, and I jump back on and they lose. So
actually, that's a great point.
Either way, I'm happy.
Can we just get that C9 prediction locked in, please? Because that's actually a great fucking point. You are a jinx. You are a walking jinx.
Mm-hmm. For Team Liquid specifically.
Yeah, don't love that.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
That
will wrap it up for this week's Mind the Gap. If you've stuck around till the end, we have a hashtag. We always have a hashtag for those dedicated followers. I love every week that we get comments being like, the episode's been out for 3 minutes. How do you guys have the hashtag? And it's because people have watched the stream. They watch the stream, and so they tune into the end and they get it. So there you go. If you've watched all the way to the end, that's how they get it. So you should consider watching the stream. We'll be back next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central European Summertime, 10 a.m. Pacific Summertime. I don't know what they do in America.
Do you have a hashtag?
Yeah, as I'm waffling, I'm coming up with a hashtag as we speak. Thinking back.
I have one. I'll let you buy time. You can take this one or leave it.
Well, I was going to do.
We ran a graphic on show of what you believe more in: ghosts, aliens, or C9 in playoffs. And ghosts won by a landslide. But like for the people that voted C9, could the hashtag be like I don't believe in ghosts? And this is saying that C9 will win.
I see everyone posting it in the chat. I wanted to go the hashtag be W Monkey or W Let's Go WE or something. But sure, if you watched all the way to the end, let's say if you're an EU fan, let's do hashtag W Monkey. If you're an NA fan, hashtag I believe in ghosts. Okay, does that seem fair?
I don't believe in ghosts.
I don't believe in ghosts.
For C9.
Yeah. I don't believe in ghosts. If you're an NA fan, hashtag I don't believe in ghosts. And shout out to the one person that DMs me on Twitter every single week with all the hashtags. That person literally, I don't know if they tune into the very end, but I do see your DMs every week. But you do, in fact, shout out to you. Next week, I will officially be on sabbatical. If you've enjoyed my casting this year, thank you. I will still be turning the stream on this weekend, and maybe more streams. We'll find out. And Jatt still has a child, so please. Yeah,
I will not be on sabbatical. But last year I kind of was during Worlds, and podcasting while not working the event is great. So you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, we shall see. So thank you so much for watching. You can catch us on YouTube, Twitch, and Spotify because Jatt will remember. And so thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week. This has been episode 23 of Mind the Gap with Vedi and Jatt.